I'm at the Shuttleworth collection at Old Warden Aerodrome, Bedfordshire, home to a magnificent collection of veteran and vintage aircraft, historic vehicles and associated memorabilia. The collection is maintained in working order and spans aviation history from its earliest days to the Second World War and a little beyond. Founded by Richard Shuttleworth in 1928, he later won the first Donington Grand Prix in 1935, but turned from motor racing to flying after an accident. He was killed in 1940 during a night training exercise with the Royal Air Force. I'm here for the first air show of the year. Yesterday was warm and sunny, but today it's freezing and very windy. The show includes free attractions like the Ferris wheel, soft play, and there are various craft, trade and food stands. I hope you enjoy what you're about to see.
Yeah. Wait, but in that cockpit.
This is the first air show I have attended. The flying display took place in the afternoon, and I have, where possible, identified or tried to identify the planes in the air. I was really looking forward to the air show, as a Catalina flying boat was going to be here, with an opportunity to look inside. I'd made a model of one in my youth. I realised yesterday that it wasn't here, and I didn't hear anything said about it in the commentary during the show, but I did find out that it had a faulty engine. was also hoping to see some of the veteran planes in action, as advertised in the souvenir programme, but that wasn't to be either. I assume the conditions for flying were not right. I believe this is a Canadian-built Hawker Hurricane, operated by the Historic Aircraft Collection at the Imperial War Museum, Duxford, near Cambridge. It was rebuilt in the 1980s and represents the 302 City of Poznan Polish Fighter Squadron, being unique in that it carries different markings on each side of the fuselage.
This is a combined looping and rolling manoeuvre, usually with one roll on the top of the loop, but that isn't enough for Steve. So he is going to be putting 3 consecutive snap rolls at the top of this avalanche, putting one wing of the aircraft in a deep stall to flank around the longitudinal axis. XA-41, also known as the S-Bac 300, is a highly advanced German single-seat aerobatic aircraft designed by Philipp Steinbach. It has a super light carbon fibre construction with an empty weight of just 570 kilos. Combined with a 350 horsepower Lycoming AIO-580 engine, that gives it a thrust-to-weight ratio that is almost unparalleled in its class. The roll performance that you see is provided by full-span ailerons combined with underwing spades that act like power steering. Now rolling to north to Anson, and that will be followed off by the Lockheed 12A Electra Junior. Into the Royal Air Force because both the SE-5A and the Bristol F-2B fighter were very significant aeroplanes on the front line for the RAF in its early operational days. Also structurally unsound. 77 of those initial SE-5s were built before they switched production to this, the 200 horsepower SE-5A, the very fast fighting scout that went out at the time of the period. It wasn't quite as agile as, say, the Soviet Camel, and it's at a higher altitude, and those are coming up against. Into service from the 56th Squadron, which flew its first operational controls on the SE-5A. By the end of the war, November 1918, 21 RAF and Empire squadrons, as well as 2 American units and SE-5As. Though built initially for somewhat different purposes. One man on the British historic aircraft team who's flown both types, though not both of these 2 exact examples, is John Corley, who used to fly the Anson for Aeroplan team. He flies this Lockheed 12 today. He's not flying it at the moment, but he is one of the pilots who flies this one. He says the Anson handles very differently. It almost feels like it's a generation older, a little more agricultural, might not be the politest way to say it. John says that in terms of stability you need to trim the Anson a little bit more, especially for a display, but with the Lockheed you don't need to trim it at all during the display with all the speed changes you need to make, and he says the Lockheed is much more pleasurable to fly. demonstration of some flower bombing. Now, a ribbon cut. The pilots have asked me to point this out to you repeatedly, as they are not confident that they are going to be able to hit the ground. They're now putting it up. It is very hard to miss a target like that. But then they also have, they are now putting their secret weapon. The self-raising flower, they think, is actually going to guide itself to the target. Released far too early there. We're now blowing up the second set as well. First set. Lining up. Good. Here he goes, making sure.
After the air show had ended, or so I thought, I went back to my camper van. I then heard the sound of a Spitfire and I believe a Hurricane in the air. I was camped with large trees around me, and the footage taken was with an iPhone as I was recharging my main camera. Unfortunately, it's not of the best quality, but the sound is not so bad. I hope you enjoy.